Hi, this is TransLiterary Lab number 9, 文学翻訳ラボ第9番, and I'm JD Wisgo from selftaught.japanese.com. Alright, so if you're new to this series and you haven't seen the previous episodes, just a quick summary. TransLiterary Lab is about taking a short Japanese fiction passage and translating it into English, showing some of the research involved in understanding and making some right word choices and just, any research required to actually do the translation. I'll be doing minimal pre-research before each of these episodes and doing most of the research during the actual recording. And the point of this is not really to get a perfect end result, but to kind of show the process of translation and just to kind of get you thinking about how the translation works, and just as kind of an exercise to talk about translation. Okay, this time I want to do a work by Miyazawa Kenji, who's a pretty famous author. You've probably heard of his Night of the Galactic Railroad. I just picked a random piece on Aozora Bunko called Akita Kaidou, which I guess would be Akita Roads or something like that. I'm not really too familiar with it, but I just picked it because it seemed relatively straightforward. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hajimaru zo. Alright, so we got the work here. And I guess I'll read through part of it on here because it's just a little easier to read. This is the page on Aozora Bunko. And I'm just going to go through the first few paragraphs. So, okay, let me just read this first paragraph and then we'll do this first paragraph. どれもみんな肥料や新炭をやり取りする寂しい家だ。街道のところどころに散らばって黒い小さい寂しい家だ。それももうみんな戸を閉めた。Okay, so I think I got most of those readings right. So if we go and switch to here, we can basically break this down into sentences, and we'll just do the first paragraph first. All right. So we got the doremo minna hirio. So this word hirio, I think means fertilizer. Let me double check. Make sure there's no other meanings. Yeah, fertilizer or manure compost. You get the idea there. This word, shintan, I don't really. This first word is firewood, and the second one is, I think, coal. I'm not sure. Let's double check. So it's not in the Japanese to English. In the Japanese, we get two meanings here. Second one is fuel, nenryo ippan, and then this is maki to sumi. So I think maki is firewood and sumi is not this maki, firewood, and that's what the first kanji is. And the second one is sumi is coal. Actually, let me double check. Charcoal. Okay, so firewood and charcoal. So yaritori, so I assume yaritori is sort of like it's like a give and take, exchange. Maybe they're kind of selling. Let's see if there's any other meanings here. An exchange. So maybe there seems like sort of a business sort of thing where they're kind of trading. Maybe trading would be a good word. So let's see if there's any other meanings that are just jumping out here. Mono o ataeru koto to uketoru koto. All right, so it's basically giving and taking. And then these other meanings probably don't fit. So just go ahead and translate. Now this dore, remember dore means which when you have more than two things in question. So the mo here kind of qualifies it and says each of them, right? Knowing that there's at least three or more. So, and then the doremo, what is it talking about? Well, there's also minna, which kind of means the same thing as doremo. They're talking about the houses, right? Now this doesn't say multiple houses, it just says house, but from context you can tell that there's more than one house, right? So each of the houses were lonely places. Now the places is not literally here, but I think it's going to be better for the wording. Lonely places that did trading in firewood and charcoal. Okay, so it would be interesting to look at some of the historical records and see, what happened in that time. I'm sure this story is fairly old, maybe, I don't know, 100 years old. We could check, but just to see what the historical context is, but we'll use this as a rough translation for now. And actually, I realized I just forgot this as well. Trading in, what was this, fertilizer, firewood, and charcoal. Okay. So, now we got this one. This is the Kaidou no tokoro dokoro ni 散らばって黒い小さい寂しい家だ. So again, we have another lonely house. And this is probably talking about multiple houses in the second sentence, the same houses that are in this first sentence, right? And you can see tokoro dokoro, which means here and there, basically. Places right here and there. So it's obviously talking about more than one. So Kaido, I think, is just simply road, but let's see if there's any nuance that I'm missing out. Highway, okay, so it's a bigger road. I guess because this is city road, right? That makes sense. Kaido. Alright, so, and then Chirabaru, and I think it means scattered, but let's double check. Alright, scattered, littered. Okay. The lonely houses were scattered. Actually, it's the black kuroi, right? And it's also small. So you notice we got 3 adjectives here. Let's look at the original text, make sure everything is correct here. So, yeah. Kuroi, chisai, sabishii ie da. So basically 3 adjectives stuck together, which is kind of interesting grammar, but it's for emphasis, I guess. So we can do it literally, maybe, right? The black, tiny, lonely houses were scattered here and there along the highway. Okay, that's not too bad. それももうみんな戸を閉めた. Right, so 戸 is like door, right? Just make sure there's no other meaning I'm missing. But yeah, it's a simple door, like a front door typically. 閉めた is obviously closed. So, and then も is like they already did, right? みんな is all of them. I notice we have different spelling, but I don't think this has any significance here. In both cases, it means all of them, right? So let's see. And then we have それも. So what is the nuance of this? I think it's just sort of to emphasize, to say also. And each of the houses had their doors closed. Okay. So let me get rid of this. We may not have enough time to do that one, but I want to at least try to do one more paragraph. Okay, and we'll kind of read it from here. It's a little easier to read. All right, zoom in. Okay, so here we go. So I'll just read the whole paragraph to get a general feeling of this. 俺は悲しく来た方を振り返る。盛岡の伝統はかすかに揺らいで眠さに並び、ただ公園の証だけ高いところで空々しい木縁の波を上げている。どうせ今頃は無鉄砲なハムシがたくさん集まってぶっつかったりよろけたりしているのだ。Alright, so I think I got most of the readings corrected. We may want to check some of them. So now that I've read that, we can go back to the text here, which I pre-prepared with the furigana. And again, we'll go sentence by sentence and see how far we can get. Okay, so it's just 3 sentences because the second one's pretty long. Now, one thing is I actually read some of these things a little bit different. Now, if you look at, I think it's the first episode where I talked about some of the classical Japanese, sometimes you'll have a he instead of an e. So this furikaeru, you can actually consider as furikaeru. And I think that's how I read it. Whether it should be officially read that way or not, I'm not sure. But I read that as furikaeru. So we can kind of, furikaeru is, of course, is to turn around, right? Look behind you. And now we have ore wa, which has sort of a masculine feeling to it as a first-person pronoun. All right, so we'll separate this out. So now we have basically the narrator, or the main character kind of directly addressing us. Okay, so 悲しく来た方を振り返る. All right, so basically sadly is probably a better word than that. But 悲しく来た方を振り返る. All right, so what is the nuance there? Well, you can think of this 悲しくin 2 ways. It's either applying to this verb or it's applying to this verb. So I'm going to, for now, and I could come back to this, but kind of assume it's talking about the first verb. Basically, he came up to here and he basically came up to this point with a sad experience. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to change my mind. And I'm going to assume this is sort of applying to the furikaeru, because that kind of makes more sense. So, and I might change my mind on that again. But let's just assume that the kanashiku, sadly, it's obviously an adverb, right? Let's assume it's applying to the second verb. Okay? So, Now, sadly, I mean, I guess it's technically not wrong grammar, but let's see if there's anything better. Sad. It's not even. Is it even in the dictionary? Yeah, it's in the dictionary. Fat. Sadly. All right. Maybe we'll use it for now. I don't like that word that much, but we'll use it for now. I turned back sadly the way I had come. Okay. I don't like that sentence, but again, let's just do step by step. Okay. So this one here. Morioka. Notice we have an o here, which in modern Japanese is typically used for a particle. Here, I think it's just used for the o sound. Now, this sounds like it's a place, but let's double check. Morioka. Okay, it's a city according to this same spelling. So yeah, it looks like it's a city. I think I've heard of it before. So dento. Let me make sure I get the spelling right on this one, or the reading. Dento. Okay, so it's an electric light, right? Denki energy ni yotte hikari o dasu. これなんていうの? Toka. Okay, so it's a light. You got that. All right, kasuka. This obviously means faintly, lightly, to a small extent. Faintly is probably the best translation of those that I mentioned. Yuragu, which is to like wave, right? Nemusao. So this is another piece of old Japanese, another aspect of traditional Japanese. This is nemuso, but it's written as nemusao, right? So like sleepily. Ni narabi. So this comes from narabu, to line up, right? Like you have trees, a line of trees, a line of whatever, line of desks, right? Tada, this is simply, but or just would be a good translation. Only. Koen no akashi. I think this is akashi. Let's check. Yeah, akashi. So light. There's probably other readings too, but look like it could be to also. So I'm not completely sure what the best reading is, but this looks like it's an arc light, which I'm not actually sure what an arc light is. I've heard it. We could probably look in the dictionary. Okay, electric arc. All right, so maybe we can just say arc light as a rough draft. Koen no aku akashi dake takai. High, obviously. Tokoro de sorozorashi. I don't know this word here. Sorozorashi. Obvious. Also, I know this word. Shirajirashi. Use this in everyday conversation, but this one, Sorazurashi, I'm not too familiar with. Kien. Guessing smoke, but I'm not sure. Let's get the actual word. Okay, looks like I might be right. All right, sakana. What is this? Energy, spirit? Hold on, it's getting lost here. Let's go back to the options. So, yeah, it looks like it's not in the Japanese English dictionary. This is the same word here. So this is hono no yo ni sakana. So basically energetic, very energetically, like a flame. And then we also have like words that are very high-spirited, something like that. So I guess this would be the more modern way to write it. Good spirits. Okay, so let's see. What is that describing? Nami. Okay, so it's basically what's a good word for that? Very aggressive. Fervor. I don't know if that's the right word. High-spirited is probably a better. Let's see if that's going to come up in my thesaurus. Yeah, lively, spirited, zestful, bouncing. Maybe something here. Exuberant. So it's talking about a wave. So to me, it's kind of like a very violent. That might be powerful, forceful, vigorous. All right, so we get some options here. Intense. I kind of like intense. All right, now I'm not sure. This doesn't seem to quite fit. This obvious, I think, is what it said. So let's see what this says. Ikanimo shinmi? Shinjitsu? Oh yeah, of course, it's shinjitsu. Should have known that one. Shinjitsu mi ga nai. Okay, so it's basically, to a large extent, or has very much reality. Or sorry, lack of reality. Did I have that wrong? Yeah, so it has a lack of reality. This is strange. Uso de aru koto ga miesuite iru. So, and the translation is obvious. So this is, I don't think this is a good, this is transparent lie. Yeah, I know it in this context, but I didn't realize. Okay, so to be honest, I'm not sure how this is fitting in this context here. So we may actually have to come back to that, do some further research to see how it's used in some other places. But let's just do our best. So I'm going to keep this as separate because it's kind of a separate idea, and just translate first this first part here. Okay, so the lights of Morioka, which again I'm assuming is a city. All right. waved faintly, right? Waved faintly, and then we have nemusou ni narabi, waved faintly. How about the sleepy row? Okay, so I'm assuming this is applying to the same lights, right? This nemusou ni narabi. Okay, so I'm kind of switching the order, but I think this might fit. The sleepy row of lights of Moriaka waved faintly. Could say in the wind here. I might actually add that, even though it's not technically in the passage. Tada koen no akuto dake. Alright. Dake takai tokoro de sorazurashi kien no nami o agete iru. Remember, in case you didn't see the first episode, just a reminder, this is an older character used in classical Japanese. In this case, it just means eat. It's read as a e, like iru, the verb of existence, you know, like boku ga iru, like that thing. So here it's just like the te iru form, or the agete iru form in this case, like ing. So it's basically, literally, this is the wave, is we're raising, but I think it means that the waves were sort of, how would I say? Well, they're obviously violent, right? They're kind of roiling, they're boiling, they're moving. So we could look at the expression nami o ageru, something that would probably be good to look up and see. Right, nami ageru. So raise a wave. We could even look at images. Sometimes that's fun. You see pictures of waves. So I think here, you know, nothing is necessarily raising a wave actively. The wave is just, it's being raised, but this is sort of an expression used. Nami ageru. Okay. So yeah, I don't think it's too common of an expression. But I think I have a good enough feeling to try to translate it. So, faintly in the wind. Let's see. Faintly in the wind. Okay. No, this is only talking about, oh, you know what? I take that back, because there is a subject, which is the lights. Akashi dake, takai tokoro de, sorazurashi kien no nami o agete iru. Okay, so we got to put all this together. So the arc lights, we'll just write it out. The arc light in the park, koen, okay? And I'll just say only. This sounds a little awkward, but we'll see how it sounds once we write it all out. All right, takai tokoro de. So at a high place. So they raised. So the lights raised waves. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what. So it seems like it's not going to be like an actual wave or rip. It's going to be some other type of wave. So I'm not quite sure what this means by the light raising. Interesting. I'm not quite sure. Well, we could just literally render this. It's not going to make sense, but let's just literally render it. Okay. And lights in the park, right? Raised violent. Just again, it's a rough translation. Violent waves, right, from a high place, right? So again, this doesn't really make sense, and we're also not translating this, right? So we'll come back to that. All right. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but sometimes it'll come to me in my subconscious as I'm working on this next line. All right. どうせ今頃は無鉄砲なハムシがたくさん集まってぶつかったりよろけたりしているのだ. Okay. So, and this might connect to the previous sentence, hopefully. So, どうせ, of course, is anyway. I'm trying to see if there's any other way to translate, but it's going to have a negative nuance, right? You can say どうせ負けるから, right? Of course, you're going to lose anyway. So it typically has a negative nuance. 今頃 is sometime around now. 無鉄砲, honestly, I don't remember what that one means. Reckless, rash. Hamushi is a bug, but I don't remember what type of bug. Leaf beetle. Taksan. I think this is Atsumaru, but let's see if there's another reading. I think there was. All right, there's also Tsudo. And the way it's written with the okurigana. Okay, Tsudo is probably closer. So we'll go with Tsudotte, which is, it's still gather. It's just a different reading. ぶつかったりよろけたりしているのだ. Okay, so we're starting to see there's a connection between these bugs and the light. Interesting. So let's just get the rough parts, the main parts, and just kind of translate them. And again, this is rash. Let me see if there's any other reckless, rash. Sometimes if I look at the synonyms, I can get a better feel for. And I think this is talking about the bugs, right? So there's these crazy bugs that are just kind of going around, thoughtless, headless. I mean, a lot of these don't really make sense to the context. Rash, ill-advised. If we can't find a good word now, that's okay. Just do our best. And we'll just use rash, right? So, and again, we have a noda at the end here, right, which is an explanation. So the main character, the whatever narrator is saying that this is, it's actually explaining probably about the previous sentence, okay? So we'll just say it must have been that some reckless, and I forgot the name of the bug. It was like leaf beetle, reckless leaf beetles. Okay. A bunch of, because we have takusan. We can change the wording later. We'll use cluster better than gathered. We're clustered together, because I assume they're talking about the light in this case. Now we have butsukattari, yoroketari shiteiru. Right, so butsukaru is obviously to bump into. Yorokeru, I think, is to dodge or avoid. Let me double check. Stumble. Okay, I was wrong about that one. That was yokeru, I think. I was confusing. Let's just show you. Avoid. Okay, yokeru is avoid. Yorokeru is stumble or stagger. Okay, so they're kind of like, it's kind of hard to describe, but they're kind of like moving, little by little, like almost eerily, right? They're just like, moving back and forth. We're clustered together, right? Bumping into another. Let's try this. Crawling all over one another. So this is not a literal translation, but it's the idea of bumping into them and staggering. And I'm just trying to get a visual picture, right? They're kind of like a big cluster that are presumably inside of this arc light, right? And let's just see, honestly, I don't know if it's going to help, but what does an arc light look like? I think it talks about the type of the technology that's actually in the light. It's not helping at all. So I wanted to see if there's, I'm assuming it's sort of like one of those classic styles. Let's see, arc light, images. Yeah, there's not much coming up. So I think there's probably a better term for this. That would be more useful. But we'll just go with this for now. Arc light. Electric arc. All right, so it's just using an electric arc, which is a similar definition. Xenon gas under the arc light. Okay, bright electrical light. So I don't think the technology matters that much in this case. But anyway, we'll get back to this. So, and I'm actually kind of liking the way this last sentence panned out. Now, the dulce I'm not capturing directly. I can think about how to squeeze that in. Imagoro is kind of implied. I'm not saying now. I could say a bunch of recipes. I could say now clustered together. I don't think it adds much to the sentence. Butsukattari, yoroketari shiteiru. And of course, the tari here, just for those of you who are, still learning Japanese, has the nuance of doing other things, right? It's a etc. type thing. They're doing these two things, right? The bumping together and the staggering. They're doing other things, right? And I could add there's definitely other ways to phrase this. This is just one idea. So if we go back to the beginning, and we'll just go over all this once more. And I know we have at least one area of concern here, okay? Each of the houses were lonely places that did trading in fertilizer, firewood, and charcoal. Okay, each of the houses were lonely places that did trading. Let's do that traded, that exchanged. Let's try to simplify here. That exchanged. I could do this, but this sounds like the actual houses are exchanging. Sounds a little strange. That I could do offered trade. Is that a good expression? Well, let's see. Sometimes I just check offered trade. That might be a offered trade. We get a bunch of unrelated stuff. So I'm not sure if this expression offered trade. Yeah, I'm getting offered trade in. Like we look for the word trade. Let's look at exchange actually. Let's see what we get here. Exchange, swapping, exchange. Yeah. Offered trade. What's another word? Let's see if there's any other words we missed here. Yaritori. I think it was just exchange, right? Trying to see if there's slightly better wording. Exchange. Exchange. Yeah. We just did exchange like this. I did exchange. I don't like the wording that much, but it's okay for now. The black, tiny, lonely houses were scattered here and there along the highway. So, I mean, this is a little unusual with the 3 adjectives, but that's basically how it's written here. And I don't think it's necessarily bad. The black, tiny, lonely houses were scattered here and there along the highway. Yeah, I like that. All right, each of their... Now, the and here is definitely jumping out. All right, furthermore, I could do furthermore. That's a little wordy, but I like it better than and. Furthermore, each of the houses had their doors closed. And keep in mind, this is at the end of a paragraph. So having a little bit of a punch, like a dramatic end is a good idea. So I kind of like this. Furthermore, each of the houses had their doors closed. All right, so second paragraph, which is a little more difficult. We had this debate here about whether the kanashiku adverb applies to the first or the second verb. Yeah, I'm definitely agreeing with my decision that it's related to the sadly, related to the turning back part. So I turned back sadly the way I'd come. Yeah, this is definitely sounds strange. So, all right. Is there any other sadly? Well, we could just look up sad, and this might give, because I don't think sadly was in the thesaurus. Miserably, despondent, down, desolate, wretched, gloomily. Gloomily, I almost like that better. Is that even a word? Gloomily. I think it's a word. So, still, I mean, I don't know if this is the best word choice, but sad, dejected. So I could use dejectedly, gloomily. So it looks like it's officially a word. But actually, I like dejectedly. Dejectedly. Better than the other ones. Okay, so we've got that a little bit refined. So this is the trickiest sentence in this passage. The sleepy row of lights of Morioka waved faintly in the wind, but only the arc lights in the park raised violent waves from a high place. Yeah, it definitely sounds really strange. I'm going to come back to this because I'll do this as the last thing, but I want to finish the last sentence here, just the second iteration. It must have been that a bunch of reckless leaf beetles were now clustered together, crawling all over one another. So I'm going to put inside the lights because I think that's what this means. And without that, it definitely sounds a little odd to me. So let's go back to this though. So my interpretation of this, and actually let me do this kien no nami, and see if this gives any. Oops. Okay. And actually let me, and this is where we get the old reading and the new reading, and we might get no hits. I just want to see, is this even a common word pairing here? Of course we get same author, and it's not a common expression, which is okay. The other way was, let me see what the other reading was for this one. There's this reading, which is probably much more common. Let's just see, right, kien no nami. Yeah, that's not coming up much either. And what was this, like a flame? So it's sort of a describing this waves. I don't know if waves is even the right word. Let's see what kind of waves. Ripples. I'm actually liking undulations, flaps of billings, quiver. I almost like ripples better, just for what I'm imagining, right? So the way I'm interpreting this is the bugs are in the light, right? And they're kind of moving around, and they're basically making this kind of weird pattern on the ground as a result of their kind of obstructing, parts of the light. That's my interpretation of this, based on just a quick look here. So, but only but I'm just going to get rid of this only now, even though it says tada. Tada can have a weak feel to it. But the arc lights in the park, let's just use my interpretation and kind of change the wording here, because the raised waves, that doesn't make sense in English. But the arc lights in the park cast violent, I don't know if I like violent either. Cast aggressive. And I'm thinking of hageshi. That's just in my mind. This word keeps popping up. Intense, bitter, violent, severe. Let's see if there's any other. Savage, rough, powerful, intense, strong, vigorous. Yeah, none of these are really fitting to me. At least, cast, violent, severe, vigorous, mighty, hefty, savage, ferocious. Yeah, I can't really think of a good choice of words for this at this point. But the arc lights in the park cast violent waves, cast violent ripples, right, on the ground below. Okay, so this on the ground below, it's definitely an interpretation, but it makes it easy to understand, assuming my interpretation is correct, right? But the arc lights in the park cast ripples on the ground below. But let's get the takai tokoro part here. But from a high place, the arc lights in the park cast violent ripples. I still don't like violent. I'm looking for a better word. Cast violent ripples. Cascading. Yeah, I can't think of a better word. Definitely would have to come back to this, because there's no way I would ever want to use this as a final translation. All right, but I think we are running out of time. I want to keep these to roughly, I guess, half an hour or so. So we'll probably stop here. I may do a second episode on this text. I have to think about that. But this is what we got in, just I guess 20, 30 minutes, which is pretty good, for the amount of time spent. Definitely have to understand this paragraph a little bit better, especially this sentence. But okay, before we close out, just a brief ad from my one of my books, translations, from fairy tale author Mimei Ogawa, who's a pretty classic author, known as the father of modern Japanese fairy tales. The book has a bunch of stories in both English and Japanese, kind of parallel translation. So every paragraph is Japanese and English, Japanese, English. So it's good for those who are studying Japanese, so you can kind of read the Japanese first and compare to the English translation. So I would definitely recommend taking a look if you're interested, especially because the difficulty levels is pretty easy, at least compared to a lot of other classic literature around that time, which is about 100 years ago, 100 years old. So it's something to check out. And you can see information about that book in the video description for this video. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Alright, so I was thinking of doing a second episode where I talked about some more details, some more clarification of the issues that we discussed in this translation. But I decided on having sort of a addendum, I guess you can call it, a little bit of extra content at the end, where I go into a little more detail. Specifically, I was really concerned about this section here, and I was thinking and did a little bit more research related to this word, sorazurashi, which I didn't really capture at all. So I wanted to tell you my conclusions about this word here. Alright, so we have obvious, but these things, they don't really... This word, shirajirashi, is commonly used for uso, right? Which is basically a lie that's very visible, right? Now, when we look at the definition of sorazurashi, we see only this meaning, right? Which is like, it doesn't have much truth to it. And it's specifically talking about the lie, right? But if we look at shirajirashi, we see there's a lot more meanings. And here basically, hakkiri so denai toいうことがわかる様、見据えている様. So here, it doesn't necessarily have to be about a lie, right? And then we also see here we have white, Now this is, keep in mind, this is for a different word, but it's strongly related to the sorazurashi. So I'm trying to use it to understand the meaning of the sorazurashi. So to me, the way I interpret the other meaning, or another way to look at this word is sort of it's very visible, right? And it doesn't have to be a lie. It could be a transparent lie, but it's basically very visible. It's very clear. So now that we have that understanding, basically, if you just as a refresher, we're talking about the high place. From a high place, the arc lights in the park cast violet ripples on the ground below. That was the translation I used. But the original text for this portion was Tada koen no aku akashi dake takai tokoro de sorazurashi kien no nami o agete iru. So I definitely want to kind of redo this section because I was just not happy with what I ended up with. So the first part I am pretty happy with, but the second part I want to refactor, specifically the sorazurashi. So here we have visible, thinking of using visible or clear, evident. Let's see if there's any other synonyms. Visible, akiraka na sama. Okay, so perceivable, observable, noticeable. So to me, it's very visible. It's not like a subtle thing. And you notice, you may notice that there's the kasuka ni yurai de nemusou ni or nemusao ni narabi. So here, kasuka is lightly, right? It's a subtle waving, right? A subtle, the light is subtly waving, potentially in the wind, or maybe it's just flickering. Actually, while we're at it, let's look at yuragu. Okay, shake, waver. Okay, so waver. Okay, so this said wave, but actually now that I'm thinking about this, waver is probably better. So here, and keep in mind we have this tada, right? It's basically, the way I look at it is sort of a contrast. So we have the lights, these regular lights are the Morioka, which I thought was a city. Let me double check and make sure. Yeah, it seems like they're talking about the city here. So it's basically the lights in the city are waving very faintly. Now, in contrast to that, right, these arc lights in the park, right, just those lights. It specifically says dake, so it's clear it's emphasizing just those. The arc lights just in the park are basically, literally, right, they're raising waves, right? They're raising waves, and this is sort of like high-spirited. And if you looked at this, if you remember in the first part, we talked about how it's kind of like a flame. It said something like hono no yoni, right? So, and this is like visible. So one other thing that's related to this, and I know I'm jumping kind of back and forth, but it's just kind of how I work. So ageru, another thing, because the raise to me, it didn't make sense. So I was looking at what other meanings, and you see there's 3 kanji. In our case, we get this first kanji, but it isn't necessarily consistently used that way. You can kind of switch around the kanjis. So we have raise, which is the one that everyone's familiar with. Give, that one also we know pretty well, ageru, right? And then if you go down, you see this get, produce, score, win. So this is a slightly different usage because you look, they're talking about profits here. And then if you go down here, you see get, raise, put up, increase, show, give, provide, cite. So the bottom line is there's a lot of different ways we can use this. It's not just like physically, raising something. So, and I think this show is potentially produce. And notice this produce here is actually kind of similar to this here, which is a different type of produce. So to me, the produce is sort of a theme that I'm seeing is going to kind of fit well here. So it's these lights, and then I also want to focus on this particle because I think it points to my misinterpretation. So I use this on the ground below stuff, but if that were the case, I would expect like takai tokoro kara, right? Maybe something it's coming from there, but the actual raising, the quote raising or the producing of the waves is happening at a location, right? And the particle is de. So it's takai tokoro de. So that's where this action of producing waves, literally waves, is happening. Excuse me. So we can say at a high place, and again we'll tweak this again, but the sleepy row of lights of Morioka waves faintly in the wind, waver faintly in the wind, but at a high place, the arc lights in the park cast violent ripples. So this cast, I'm gonna change this to produce visible ripples. So this is a little better. Now, the thing I don't like about this though is that the kien part I kind of took out because I couldn't think of violent. So I'm just trying to imagine what's happening here. I mean, they're very visible, right? They're moving around. These ripples, they're literally waves, right? But to me, it's basically like flames, right? So we could do ripples of flame. That would be an interesting idea because that's really what the interpretation is, right? It's an arc light. It uses electricity, and there's obviously some sort of flame. It's not like an LED, not sort of a LED bulb. I'm expecting there's actual flame that we're seeing. Now it is an electric light though. Come to think about it. So it uses an electric arc. So actually, let's go back, just double check, because now I'm thinking this electric arc light might actually be more important. So we're getting totally unrelated stuff again. So I know I did this search before, but I want to see light produced by an electric arc. All right, so arc lamp. Okay, this looks like it's it. Also called a carbon arc between electric. Okay, so it's the first practical electric light. So we can just see what do these look like, right? It's not a gas lamp. We know that it's using electricity, but here we see there's an arc, krypton arc. All right, so it could be just inside of a bulb. So there's probably an arc. Let's assume it looks something like this, right? So it's maybe some of these things that are kind of waving back and forth. Like I mean, it is a flame basically, right? It's an electrically produced flame, but it is a flame. Something like this is what I'm thinking maybe we're seeing, right? So now that we have some picture of that, we can think, does that make sense with the wording I'm using here, right? I have visible ripples of flame. So I'm kind of liking this wording a lot better than my original one. And instead of this projecting, I had this thing about casting ripples on the ground, which was, nice imagination on my part maybe, but I don't think it really fits too well with the actual text now that I'm kind of rereading it. And then there's the matter about the bugs. So since I changed this, I want to go through this sentence again. And we have the dose imagoro wa uteppo na hamushi ga takusan atsumatte butsukatta yoroketta ri shite iru no da. Okay, so again, this noda here is about explaining this sentence, right? So what's probably the case now, before I was thinking there's these bugs and they're affecting how the light is projected on the ground, which is sort of my misinterpretation. Now that I'm understanding this ripples of flame stuff better, I'm thinking what this actually means is the bugs are kind of like, running around, or kind of, they're moving around the light, maybe on the outside of this bulb. And I don't know if they're necessarily causing the light to ripple, but there's some interaction there. Potentially, right? Because this is a explanation, right? And this dose, I didn't really talk about this too much. I briefly said there was a negative nuance. But I'm trying to see if I can understand what the author was getting at here. All right, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, let's look at an example, right? Dose dame da, I can do it anyway, right? So, again, there's a negative idea here, right? どういうふうにしてもできない, right? So the nuance is, anyway is really the only literal word I can think of in English, and especially in terms of translation. But when it comes to here, I don't think anyway is going to fit. So let's look at the Japanese See if there's any other wording that I missed here, or any other definition. ある状態や結果を初めから決まったものとして、認める気持ちを表す。Okay? いずれにしても、所詮。So that's like in the end, right? That kind of nuance. So let's look at the second one here. ある事態を受け入れるしかないのなら、むしろその機会を積極的に利用しようとする様一層。いっそ作るならいいものを作ろう。Okay. So yeah, I'm not sure if this would be applying to the situation. ある事態を受け入れるしかない。So this is, yeah, this is basically, if you're going to do something anyway, this is like if you're going to make something anyway, then you might as well make something good. So it's a similar meaning, but this is like maybe I don't know if tsuideni is a good word, but it's kind of like you're gonna do it no matter what. You might as well do a good job. So that kind of nuance. But anyway, I think it does still apply in that situation. So I'm not seeing any extra nuance here. So to me, and I haven't read the rest of this piece, but it's clear just from the beginning there's sort of a dark tone, right? I mean, you're in a city, they're lonely, they're emphasizing the loneliness, and then there's the dejectedly, turning back, and sleepy lights. So it's, the city's sleeping. It's an interesting atmosphere. I want to go back and read the rest of this piece, but basically there's definitely a dark tone to this. So this is like, kind of having, to me, it's adding to that negative tone. I don't know if cynical is necessarily the right word, but to me it does have a little bit of that tone now that I'm reading through it again. So we could try to capture that here, but I think it's okay as is. So I think that's all I wanted to do in this kind of extra piece at the end of this episode. But let's just look at this sentence one more time now that we kind of refactored it, okay? The sleepy row of lights of Morioka waver faintly in the wind, but at a high place the arc lights in the park produce visible ripples of flame. So I'm going to change this to from. Even though the particle is de, I still think from kind of fits because it's far away from where you're standing, where the main character's standing. But from a high place, the arc lights in the park produce visible ripples of flame. So yeah, I definitely like this much better. We could probably iterate on this some more because it's really nice description. And to me, this is a really fun part about translation, right? That you get to kind of take some beautiful text in one language and make it into beautiful literary prose into another language. But to do that live, to get it to really polished is definitely difficult because it just does take a lot of time. So it would be fun to go back and go through this again. But I think this is much better if you just kind of compare. And it's not just the fluidity, the naturalness of the sentence. It's the interpretation of the original text, right? Because this casting violent ripples on the ground, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, now that I'm reading through this, at least after I did a little more research, thought about it, I think this is a better interpretation because if it was talking about casting on the ground, I think it would be a little more explicit in the wording. So we'll go with this. But anyway, so that's the end of this this second part of this episode. Thanks for watching.